So the reading this morning is from Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be.
Thank you, Elaine. Mark, do you want to come and join me up here? Let's pray for Mark. Yeah, Lord, we just thank you for Mark. Thank you for the words that you've given him to share this morning. Lord, would you open our hearts and our ears to what he's got to say, and may you bless him greatly for what he's about to share. Amen.
Amen. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to move this table over here because it's hot today, isn't it? I'm like sweating. Like during the worship, all I could see was my big, bald, sweaty head in the thing. So I really apologise if that's all you could see. But it's so good to be with you here this morning. You won't be surprised to know that you're not my usual crowd. You're much older than they are, but much prettier, I can assure you. But they're actually in with us this morning, so play nice. But I've been assured by Danny that you are actually much better behaved than they are. So there won't be any mid-sermon selfies from the front down here. I'm watching. No Snapchatting across the balcony, and no asking mid-sermon when the tuck shop will open, though if these guys are in, that may actually happen. I love this church. I've been here for 3 years. Can you believe that? 3 years. How much has happened in 3 years? Like, it's mental. Do you remember 3 years ago, we talked about the word Brexit? That word, that's all we spoke about. And then 3 weeks into my starting, COVID came up, and then that's all we spoke about. And then we stopped going to church. We went to church online. That was an experience. We came back. We wore masks. We weren't allowed to sit near each other. That was sometimes a blessing if you sweat like me. But we came back, and God has just been so incredible. Seeing young families come to church, I just get so excited. Fridays and Tuesdays, and just seeing God so at work. But I'm not here to talk to you about that today, although I could literally talk for hours, and you probably know that I probably could, so you're in for a real ride. But I'm here to talk to you about the passage that has just been read out. And so to help me get through this, to keep me to point, because as you know, I can talk, I have 3 points, which are slightly different to the ones Leeds United decide to get this season. We are now relegated. That hurts a little. Or slightly different to the 3 points that Arsenal decided to give away towards the end of the season. And that gives me great joy in saying that, knowing our vicar is an Arsenal fan. But I have 3 points, so if you're note-taking, then that will help you. And my 3 points are life behind the mask, life without the mask, and a father's reward. Just going to have a sip before I get going. So I love being a father. I have 3 children. I have Lily, who's 14, going on 21. I have Bella, 4.5. That half is so important. But she is also going on 21. She has the attitude of her sister. I can guarantee you that. And our newest and latest addition, Elijah, who's just so incredible, who has learnt to stick his tongue out. So that's all he's doing at the moment. He's just smiling. His tongue's just hanging out. It's really quite weird. But each is so unique. But my 4.5-year-old Bella, when she was younger, in fact, not when she was younger, throughout, she just loves playing make-believe. So she absolutely lives for the make-believe game. So she plays with her LOL dolls, her Barbies, anything she can think of, she will do it. The other day at church, she was outside in her ballerina dress teaching people how to do ballet. She's never been to ballet before in her life. But in her mind, she's got this. She can do ballet, and she was jumping up the wall, and I saw people copying. I'm like, what are you doing? You look so silly. But she loves make-believe games. And looking around the room this morning, I'm pretty sure that when you guys were younger, we've got a few make-believers in this room. We probably have some make-believe soldiers running around with your stick and commando rolling on the grass, maybe some make-believe nurses wrapping up your sibling or your teddy bear in a towel because they were poorly, maybe some make-believe teachers where you'd sit your teddies and do the register, tick them in, tick them out. Can you tell that I had this done to me being the youngest? My sisters just used to do all kinds of things. My ultimate favourite, though, make-believe was Fireman Sam. Fireman Sam, that was me. That was my deal. I absolutely loved Fireman Sam. I would dress up as Fireman Sam. I had the hat, I had the outfit, I had the boots, I had my, no repeating this, guys, okay? I had my teddy bear that I'd tied to my back, and that was my breathing apparatus, Snowy. And then my dad, I have no idea why I'm telling you this. My dad would ring the bell, and Fireman Mark would come sliding down the banister, ready to put out the fire. Like I wouldn't come downstairs for dinner unless he rang the bell so I could slide down. That's how serious I took it. But as I grew up, the dressing up stopped. It does for us all. But as I studied this text, what I realized that although the dressing up stopped, the make-believe never really stopped. It just evolved into more age-appropriate roles, make-believing that I was different versions of myself depending on who I hung around. It was though I would wear different masks and I would outwardly change what I would say, what I would do, how I would behave in front of others, all so I could fit in, all so I could gain their approval and their acceptance, all so my life felt like it mattered, that I felt like I had worth. And when I look back, actually, I faked my Christianity. I faked my faith for so long. I grew up knowing Jesus, so I knew how to be a Christian. I'd be in church with my hands lifted high, but one eye open to see who was seeing my worship, how holy I was. Or I'd go away to youth camps, and I'd always go up for prayer, like responding to whatever was being preached about. But it wasn't really to God. I was going up so someone with authority would come and pray for me, so I would feel like I was special, so I would feel like my public performance had gained their approval, so again, I would feel like I had worth. It was all about me. And when we join Jesus in this passage, what we hear is Jesus challenging what had become an all too regular occurrence. Public performances of a relationship with God that was about as real as a 6-year-old firefighter I pretended to be, or the young adult that grew up wearing many different masks, hoping he wouldn't be found out, hoping he would fit in. If we were to look at this passage a little deeper, one of the words that stick out is the word hypocrite, which is Greek, the Greek word for hypocrite, hypocrites, which one's translated means actor or stage player. I would play the role of a Christian. And as you're sat here today, you might be playing the role of a Christian. We may also play the role that our families are perfect, that we are so in love with our children all the time, that we have perfect parenting abilities, that we never lose our mind when our children do wrong things. And we may wear the mask that says everything is okay to other people when really we've had the worst week of our lives. In 1 Samuel 16:7, God says to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance or the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." I don't know if you've ever tried to play hide and seek with a toddler, but if you haven't, I'm here to tell you this morning that they are rubbish. They are rubbish at playing hide and seek. A few years ago, when Bella was a little younger, we lived, and this was during COVID, so we played hide and seek a lot. She'd come run up to me, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, can we play hide and seek?" I'm like, "Yes, of course we can, darling. Go and hide. Daddy will count to 1,000, and I'll come find you." It was long nights during COVID. And so I would go off and find her. And when she was younger, she didn't quite understand. So I'd walk into the room, and there she would be with her eyes closed, because in her mind, if she couldn't see me, then I couldn't see her. And as she grew up a little more, I'd walk into the room, and she got a little better, but she'd be like half under her bed. You're like, "Oh, I don't know where Bella is." And there she would be giggling. Or my ultimate favorite, when you walk into the room, and all you see is this lump underneath the quilt giggling, and you're like, I wonder where you could be. But toddlers are rubbish at playing hide and seek. And we can all too often believe that we have managed to hide how we are truly feeling from God. That the masks we outwardly wear that make us feel like we have this and make us show that we have this perfect relationship with God, that we're always so close to Jesus, that our prayer life is always strong, that we read our Bible, that we serve, or that we actually trust God with our money. Galatians 6:7 says this: if you think you can fool God, you are only fooling yourselves. You will harvest what you plant. Now, whilst at times the mask we wear manage to fool ourselves and those around us, what we need to know and hear this morning that you have never once fooled God. To him, you are just hiding in plain sight, with your reward being only the approval and public acceptance of those around you. Now, I'm not saying this is something we actively go out and try to do, but sometimes we do it. We feel this pull to try and publicly perform in front of others to gain their approval. This may be your Christianity. This may be how good you are at parenting. This may be how good you are at your job. But whatever it is, we do it. But if you think you can fool God, you are only fooling yourselves. So how have you come here this morning? Are there things that you've been hiding in plain sight from God? Are you living towards the world's expectations or towards God's own word? It's hot, isn't it? So why do we wear masks? For what purpose do we ensure our true selves remain hidden? I fully believe that it's because our worth, our self-worth, is so entangled like Christmas tree lights within the opinions of others. We have been constantly told as we're growing up that we must value the opinions of other people, even if they are contradictory to what your God says about you. That we must conform to where the world lives, what the world says we should do, how the world says we should act, what the world says we believe. That vulnerability is wrong and weakness, we should not show any of that unless the world tells us we should. I was 23 years of age when I knew what a mask-free life could feel like. I'd been invited to a friend's church after living what we Christians call the wilderness. Now, it's not a John Wayne classic with shootouts and tumbleweeds. This was nightclubs, the bottom of vodka Red Bull glasses, the end of a spliff, or broken relationship after broken relationship. I entered that church not wanting to be there. I had hoped I wouldn't make it, but God had other plans. As I went in, the worship began. I found my seat, and as the worship continued, I just felt so odd. It felt so weird, and it's so hard to explain because what I had carried for so long felt parts of who I was. And as the worship continued, it was God was saying to me, Mark, what you have carried for so long was never meant for you. The masks you had been wearing are preventing you from the life I have for you. Chasing your self-worth through nightclubs, by getting drunk, chasing money, chasing status, chasing women is not where your worth lay. Let me in, open up, and let me show you what a mask-free life can feel like. My second point is living a mask-free life. Jesus tells us, Matthew 11:28-30, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden light." Now, the first step in living a mask-free life is not the easiest. In fact, we'll do it again and again and again, and that is come to Jesus as you are. No change or mask required, no sorting yourself out before you get to Jesus. Come to him as you are, tired, broken, depressed, weighed down by other people's opinions of you, struggling with forgiveness, struggling with addiction. However you're feeling, whatever mask you're wearing, whatever weight you are carrying, you can come to Jesus as you are. If there's one thing I've learned about Jesus over the years, that he never, ever changes. What he said in the Bible all those years ago was true then, it's true today, it's true forever. So you know when you approach Jesus, you know who you are approaching. You don't need to check in with God to make sure Jesus is in the right mood, that he's had his Weetabix before you go to him with your problems. You don't need to sort yourself out and get yourself right before you approach Jesus. You can come to him as you are. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is that of the bleeding woman who bled for 12 years. Found in Luke 8, a woman who had experienced shame and rejection her whole life. She had no control over that condition, but she would have carried baggage, rejection, pain everywhere she went. But one encounter with Jesus changed her life forever. We join the story where Jesus had just asked who had touched him. The woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." No sorting yourself out before you approach me. No dealing with your past before you approached him. She went as she was, broken, carrying all the baggage, wearing all the masks, in need of someone to help her. Before the crowd, she approaches Jesus, vulnerable to all kinds of words and abuse from the community. She approaches Jesus and she leaves him whole. Jesus describes himself as gentle and humble, who asks nothing more than for us to approach him as we are. His burden is light, and he leaves us free from the baggage of unforgiveness, free from the baggage of addiction, of comparison, of feeling lost and without hope, free from a life full of masks. Now, the world will make you believe that trying to give up chasing after all these things, trying to please the world, will leave you even more lost, will leave you even more weighed down, that trying to become successful and chasing status and finances is what you should be doing, when the opposite is quite true. What Jesus offers us is light, and it is easy. And all you need to do is come as you are. I get that it's a daunting task. Our feelings are no joke. But when we approach Jesus, what we have to understand is that we approach no ordinary man. We approach the King of Kings, whose heart is gentle, whose heart is kind. Now, I've been married for 10 years. Can you believe that? I can't. And I'm constantly amazed at how my wife puts up with me. There's no nods around here, I hope. But what I've learned in these 10 years is that when Emily tells me something more than once, I really need to listen. That what she's saying is important. I see a few husbands nodding as we go around the room. And so as we read this passage, what stands out is Jesus mentioning the word reward 3 times. Verse 1, if you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Verse 2, truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. And finally, verse 4, there your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And this leads to my final point, the Father's reward. 3 times directly addressing the rewards of our behavior that I've spoken about this morning, behavior that was entangled like Christmas tree lights within the opinions of others, behavior that was at its heart self-serving, self-pleasing. At its heart was all about us, all about me. I was living a life directed towards people's praise and acceptance, a life that was never, ever going to be sustainable. Feelings change, relationships change, situations change, and with that, the opinions of others. It's an exhausting life, and if you have lived that life or are living that life, then you know just how tiring it can be performing for other people, and it is unsustainable, and it is never what God had planned for you. I thought that the drinking and the good times and the chasing after ambition and status and friendship and finances and reward was what I should have been doing, was where my happiness and self-worth would lay. In fact, that's the lies the world would want you to believe. That your happiness and your value and your worth is found in the size of your house, the size of your family, the size of your bank balance, how good you are at your job. But the truth is that will never be enough. You will always want more money. You will always want a newer house. You will always want bigger friends. You will always want nicer words coming your way. But more importantly, you will miss out on all that God has for you. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." And in this, peace means wholeness. Go away free, go away whole, without all the baggage and pain that you have been carrying the majority of your life. I fully believe Jesus is telling us today that the reward for our faith in him and our obedience in him is wholeness. Everything you could ever need is found in the loving arms of our King of Kings, Jesus Christ. So look to him. He cares so deeply for you. Don't waste your time publicly performing for the approval of others whose opinions change depending on which way the wind is blowing. C.S. Lewis said these memorable words: "We are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink, sex, and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday by the sea, we are far too easily pleased." And the psalmist was so right when they said, "Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked." It took me a long time to come to a point where that really actually made sense. But I've never felt more free, more at home, more loved than I have when I've had an authentic relationship with God without trying to publicly perform my faith in front of others. 2020 was, without doubt, the worst year of my life. I nearly lost my mother, 3 weeks in a coma she spent with COVID. During that time, my brother died unexpectedly. I snapped my Achilles. Life was really, really, really hard. Broken and at my lowest point, I was met with a God who wasn't distant, who wasn't unable to understand the pain that I was going through. I didn't have to check in to find out if Jesus would accept me crying again, shouting at him again. What I was met with was the opposite. I was met with a God, the same God that knew me before I was even formed in my mother's womb. I was met with the same Jesus that carried his cross to Calvary and with his arms stretched open and with his last breath said, "It is finished." And so however you're feeling this morning, if you are in doubt of whether Jesus loves you or not, what you have to understand is that the Jesus you approached is so in love with you. You only need to look to that moment on Calvary for proof. So as the band lead us, the question still remains, what are you or what have you been hiding in plain sight from God? What masks do you constantly wear that prevent you from living the authentic life and all that God has for you? What pain have you carried for so long that it's become part of who you are? This morning, as the band lead us, approach Jesus as you are. Come to Jesus. Allow the Father in, for he loves you, he is gentle, and he is humble of heart.
If you're willing and able, please stand.